If there's one thing that unites MMA fans like no other, it's bad judging. And 2021 has seen its fair share of decisions that left fans scratching their heads. Today, we look at the calls so egregious, even Cecil Peoples would shake his head in disapproval. Actually, okay, let's not get carried away here. Welcome to the INC, and these are the 5 worst judges' decisions of 2021. Number 5, TJ Dillashaw versus Cory Sandhagen. In 2019, TJ Dillashaw left the sport in a sea of controversy, and his comeback fight with Cory Sandhagen at the UFC Apex did little to ease hostilities. Dillashaw was competing for the first time since testing positive for EPO following his loss to Henry Cejudo, and faced an uphill battle against Sandhagen, who was coming off highlight reel knockouts in his past 2 fights. Sandhagen opened the fight with his trademark flying knee and nearly caught Dillashaw in an inverted triangle in the process, before dropping the former champion with a left hook in the second. By this point, Dillashaw had suffered serious superficial damage and was struggling to see out of his left eye. Dillashaw, to his credit, displayed grit and responded well by catching Sandhagen with haymakers and using his wrestling when the Sandman started getting reckless. But by the end of the fight, the consensus from the MMA community was that Sandhagen had done enough to claim the win.
TJ Dillashaw!
The majority of MMA journalists scored the fight in favor of Sandhagen, believing the Sandman caused the more meaningful damage over 25 minutes. A belief that gained momentum months later when Dillashaw was forced to turn down an interim title shot due to a knee injury, surprise surprise, sustained during the Sandhagen fight. Ironically, Sandhagen would take Dillashaw's place for the title match, giving a spirited performance in a Fight of the Year candidate against Petr Yan at UFC 267. The Sandman enjoying a stock-raising year even without the success to go with it. Number 4, Housemanfio versus Clay Collard. 2021 has been a breakout year for the Professional Fight League, but if one thing has hampered the upstart promotion, it's been the questionable decisions by its judges. One of the biggest examples came in August, when Housemanfio took on Clay Collard in the semifinal of the PFL lightweight tournament. Manfio was one of the feel-good stories of the year. A long spell of inactivity saw the Brazilian working as a janitor to make ends meet, before entering the contest as an alternate. Collard, meanwhile, had his own quirky backdrop, developing a cult following after a successful spell in boxing before claiming an upset win over former UFC champion Anthony Showtime Pettis. Collard showed why he was the bookmaker's favorite going into the fight, overwhelming the Brazilian with his volume striking and even briefly hurting the Brazilian near the end of the first round. The pace continued in the second, with Collard mixing body, head, and clinch strikes as Manfio resorted to long-range shots in a bid to get back into the fight. While Manfio came on strong in the third, arguably doing enough to win the last round, the consensus was that Collard's increased output and accuracy would book his place in the tournament final. The MMA community were united in condemning the decision, with one bookmaker quoted as giving minus 3,000 odds on Collard claiming the win. The fighter himself did little to hide his frustration when questioned by reporters after the fight.
I mean, what do you want me to say? That shit sucks.
Collard's final blow came a few months later, as Manfio advanced the final to face PFL veteran Loic Rajabov, claiming a unanimous decision and the $1 million cash prize in the process. It wasn't the first time, however, the PFL made headlines for its questionable judging. Number 3, Michael Venompage versus Douglas Lima 2. Hometown cooking was back on the menu in 2021, as Michael Venompage took on Douglas Lima in the main event of Bellator London. The fight was seen as an important one for Page. Despite a stoppage win over Derek Anderson, the Brit had struggled to shake off his reputation as a can crusher, one that was arguably enforced after a spectacular knockout loss to Lima back in 2019. Lima entered the match on the ropes as well, having failed in his bid to become a two-weight champion before losing his welterweight belt to Yaroslav Amasov. The fight was a battle of striking and wrestling, with MVP briefly dropping Lima in the first, but having little answer for the Brazilian's grappling when the fight finally hit the mat. And this was before the British crowd nearly had a case of deja vu in the middle of the second round. Although Venompage continued to land the more meaningful strikes, his output was well below that of Lima. And when the former champion landed another takedown in the final round, the British crowd seemed all but resigned to their hero suffering a second loss. Fire up the ovens.
It was not without controversy, and it was by his fingernails, but MVP has scaled Mount Lima.
While fans criticized the fight as a hometown decision, it's important to note that sole British judge Ben Cartledge scored the fight for Lima, while American judges Eric Collin and Doug Crosby went the way of the local fighter. The fight would have a long-term impact on Bellator, as this, added with a confusing bout between Yoel Romero and Phil Davis, led company president Scott Coker to introduce 5-round main events on non-title fights, with the new rules set to come into force in 2022. Number 2. Macie Barber vs. Miranda Maverick. Macie Barber vs. Miranda Maverick was touted as a showcase for two of women's MMA's best prospects. The end result would have people talking for the wrong reasons. After returning to action following a knee injury, Barber's stock had taken a blow due to a unanimous decision loss to Alexa Grasso, and Barber entered the match as a 3-1 underdog to Maverick, who was riding a 5-fight winning streak. Maverick began more aggressively against the notoriously slow-starting Barber, holding the center of the cage and venturing forward with bodywork and solid punching combinations. Barber's start proved so labored, coach Uriah Faber was forced to dumb down his corner advice.
Okay, you gotta try to hit her.
Straighten it out.
The Missouri native continued her dominance in the second. Although Barber proved busier in that same round, most of her strikes proved off-target and ineffective, while Maverick scored a takedown and landed heavy ground strikes to close out the round. Barber finally came to life with a pressured attack in the final round, but as with her fight with Grasso earlier this year, many considered the rally to be too little, too late. Except the 3 men sitting cage side.
Macie, the future Barber!
The stats told a damning story. According to the website Fight Metric, Maverick landed 82 strikes over 15 minutes compared to Barber's 38. While all 22 media outlets scoring the fight did so in favor of the older fighter. Barber, meanwhile, remained humble as ever in handling all the criticism.
I did. I won that fight and I got my hand raised. I don't read Twitter. I don't read comments. I don't pay attention to that. I did what I needed to do. The judges did what they needed to do and I got my hand raised. So that's pretty much all there is to it.
The two women's stories were intertwined again in December, when Maverick replaced an injured Barber against Erin Blanchfield at UFC 269, where Barber avoided another career-damaging bullet at Maverick's expense. Number 1. Gleison Tibau vs. Rory MacDonald. Rory MacDonald entered 2021 with wealthy aspirations. One of the worst judges' decisions of all time quickly bounced those plans. MacDonald surprised many when he signed for the PFL in 2021, having just come off a title-winning tenure competing for Bellator, and after making easy work of his company debut over Curtis Millender, quickly emerged as the favorite for the company's welterweight crown. In his second group match, MacDonald accepted a main event bout against fellow UFC veteran Gleison Tibau. Tibau had lost his opening round match to João Zeferino a few months earlier, and knew anything less than a win would end the Brazilian's title aspirations. MacDonald peppered Tibau with jabs throughout 15 minutes of action, landing several more significant strikes and coming closest to finishing the fight with a rear naked choke late in the first. Tibau had no answer for MacDonald's movement, continuing to eat several heavy shots and even resorting to spinning attacks in an attempt to change his fortunes. Tibau attempted to amp the pressure during the final stages, but continued to take further damage from MacDonald's jab. With 4 times as many strikes as his opponent, MacDonald had seemingly cruised to a decision win. The subsequent result took fans, pundits, and even Tibau himself by surprise.
There was maybe a round that was close, but even that round I thought Rory won.
The first round was close. That's the only round I thought was close.
That's
That's
an
indefensible decision. You can't make a case for that decision.
The fight sparked immediate controversy. The fan scoring website Verdict MMA gave MacDonald the win by 248 points, the largest margin in website history. While some even went as far as to suggest the result was an attempt to get Tebow into the next round thanks to his star power. The biggest critic, however, was his conquered foe.
We shouldn't have to as fighters, as competitors. We should be able to fight and rest easy that, we have competent, fair, truthful judging. It's just crazy. We don't have this in any other major sporting event. It just seems like over and over and over again we're getting this in our sport, and it's just a real shame.
The fight would have a butterfly effect on MacDonald's tenure, as his loss moved him to the other second half of the bracket in a match with Ray Cooper III, who made easy work of the Canadian on his way to a unanimous decision. And now, time for a few honorable mentions. Manel Kape was left fuming after a controversial loss to Matheus Nicolau, and took all of his frustration out on an unassuming Ode Osborne.
He's switching stance a lot. Pulled it right into it. And that will do it.
Failure to give Kyler Phillips a 10-8 round led to his loss against Housemanfio at Vegas 32. The judge who sat behind Kayla Harrison at UFC 269. Actually, that might be the best decision of the year. This is the INC. Please like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss a video.